The 2023 elections may have come and gone, but to say that it is over and done with may be a statement of falsehood, given the current challenges that surrounded the electoral process that happened on the 25th of February this year. Of course, the election have come and litigations are on the way. Several other oppositions have continued to raise their displeasure and dissatisfaction with the electoral process that happened on the 25th of February in Nigeria. But one of the key factors that gave the Nigerian people a lot of confidence in the electoral process that year, you would agree with me, has been a journey that Nigeria embarked on 12 years ago, which is the journey of digitizing its electoral process. 12 years down the line, we had an election. And we have the results that we have so far. How much and how far can we say that digitizing the electoral process in Nigeria has helped to shun electoral malpractice and help to achieve a more organized, a more globally acceptable system of electioneering in Nigeria? This and many more is our focus on today's edition of the program. Thank you so much for joining us. This is The Ultimate Choice, reaching you live from Alive Television. I am Olubenga George. When I come back, my guest will join me to look at the subject at hand. Don't worry, it's going to be an interesting conversation and you're just going to enjoy every bit of it. So I implore you, sit down, relax, and make sure that you don't miss a moment of this wonderful conversation. I'll be back. Welcome back, everyone. In case you just joined us, this is The Ultimate Choice, a live television special election broadcast program. And of course, the election, especially the presidential and national assembly elections, have come and gone. But a lot of issues are already at stake and have to be discussed. Chief of them is the performance of the electronic devices that were used during the 2023 presidential and national assembly elections. It has generated a lot of furor as many opposition parties have kicked at the result that produced the president-elect, that is, the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in the February 25th presidential election. Now, to look at the performance of electronic devices that have been adopted and were used in this last election, and some of the high points and the falls within that process, I have been joined by a legal practitioner right here in the studios, Tobe Madu. He is a legal practitioner right here. He joins me in the studio. It's good to have you join me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's begin this conversation by getting your general sense of what you are able to make out of the 2023 presidential and national assembly election, which of course have been marred by many allegations of corruption, allegations of connivance, especially the ruling party with the Independent National Electoral Commission. Are you part of those people who believes that the electoral process and the February 25th election in Nigeria was not free, fair, and credible?
Yes, largely the elections from my own point of view, both personal experience and observation as well, it was not free. It wasn't free, fair, and credible. There were a lot of voter suppression. There were a lot of rigging in terms of some hoodlums kind of overtook some polling units, but in Lagos, we saw it in Lagos. We saw it in some places in Imo State as well. And we experienced it in Rivers State. The INEC largely didn't, as an institution that are answerable and accountable to Nigerians, largely didn't go in line with their own guidelines. These guidelines were established by them, and they are also the ones that went against it. So going against those laid down guidelines and every other thing that happened, voter suppression, the fact that the Nigerians that would have voted or that voted, we are not happy with the outcome of the elections and all, points strongly to the fact that it was largely not credible. So I'm among the people that are saying that the elections were not credible.
All right, so let me quickly get your view before we move deeper into this conversation, especially about the digitization drive of the electoral body in Nigeria. Are you part of the people that also believe that the ruling party actually connived with the Independent National Electoral Commission to secure the victory of the February 25th presidential poll in favor of the party's candidate, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president-elect?
Well, what I can say is the INEC is really not being straightforward to Nigerians. They are not being straightforward to Nigerians. A lot of things are done behind the scenes and not at the full glare of the people. It gives room for the people to actually believe and for people to believe that they connived with the ruling party. For instance, when you provide for a means by which the results would be transmitted, and it's going to show the live, like real-time results for the people to monitor it from the comfort of their homes or even still at the polling units. And deliberately you didn't go by that means. It only gives room for thoughts to be entertained regarding connivance. So the INEC really acted against their guidelines. They were not straightforward. Regardless of the funds that were released, we saw voter suppression everywhere. And even when some agents of political parties that were in the collation centers were raising these issues, kept raising these issues while the collation was going on for INEC to look into it. They didn't look into it. They kind of played a deaf ear to that and went ahead with the announcement of the results, regardless of the fact that it was marred by fraud and illegalities. There were so many polling units across the nations that elections didn't take place. But then the results were announced in those polling units. And the attention of the INEC officials were brought to this fact severally. Yet they did nothing about it. So it's only fair for Nigerians to think that it may be a deliberate attempt to get the ruling party in the system again.
All of this for me happens to be allegations and suspicions, like you say. And that will take me to my next question. When we talk about suspicion within the Nigerian electoral framework, you would realize that there is a wide lacuna between the leaders and the electorate who do not trust in the system. A lot of people say even if you bring an angel to be Nigeria's leader, Nigeria's president, that person is going to be corrupted because of the kind of system that we have. Could this mindset and this existing lack of trust in public institutions and public officials in Nigeria, could it have played any role in the way and manner in which people expected and interpreted the delivery of INEC's responsibilities in this electoral process?
Yes, I think it did. It did play a role. Exactly. The reason why I'm laying so much emphasis on INEC not going through their guidelines is because that was the only area that Nigerians held on to. For the first time, Nigerians were positive to the fact that, the elections may be free, credible, and fair. The president gave us his assurance. He did that both locally and internationally. He went abroad and he boasted of the fact that, the state apparatus are on ground and plans have been made in motion to make the elections very credible. So, and with the revised edition of the INEC guidelines and introduction of the BVAS, electronic transmission of results and all that, Nigerians just wanted to cling on to that hope that, if the polling unit results can be posted and we see it and we're observing it, we can as well trust the credibility of the process. If they go in line with all their guidelines, if they live up to the expectations and their words and their assurances to Nigerians, we can just trust the process. But the moment that aspect of it wasn't complied with, we are free to cast whatever aspersions that we can cast on it until proven in court.
All right. Let me say thank you, for that impeccable delivery and perspective to this issue. But I also like it to bring it back to us. Okay, so we started talking about the digitization drive, of Nigeria to ensure that its electoral process is digitized and hence can be monitored. And that's what Nigerians are expecting, like you said, from the Independent National Electoral Commission. But like I mentioned from the beginning, 12 years down the line, Nigeria as a country, I remember 2011 when President Goodluck Jonathan, was going to come into power. We're talking about fingerprint identification at the time, which would have been the entrance, to this digitization process of the Independent National Electoral Commission and Nigeria towards the election in general. 12 years down the line now, how would you describe Nigeria's digitization journey so far? Can we say that it has worked? Have we made any progress? Especially when you look at it from the perspective of the 2023 February 5th presidential National Assembly elections?
Well, to be fair, I would say that progress have been made, to be fair. Since the return of democracy in 1999, there have been a lot of clamor for transparency in the electoral process. And that was what led to the introduction of most of the technology and digitalization process. We started from the PVCs, the smart card readers, and I think 2016 witnessed the electronic voters, the EVR, electronic voters registration and all that. So, 2015 rather. So there have been an incremental progress so far. Now with the accreditation of voters, now we can now say that the issue of overvoting and the issue of renting people here and there to come and vote and all that have been laid to rest, because before you vote, you must be accredited, and they must ensure that you're supposed to vote in their polling unit where you appeared to vote. So fairly, I can say there have been progress, but as with all technological advancements, it doesn't happen absent glitches here and there. It doesn't happen absent issues, but the ability of the institution in charge, being INEC, to respond swiftly to these issues, address them time-shortly, and to fairly is what matters. Now, the BVAS wasn't just used in this 2023 presidential election. The first time the BVAS was used was in I think Delta State in the in the Isoko South, Isoko South constituency in September 2021. That was the first time it was used. And observers, electorates, and agents alike expressed their concerns about the malfunctioning of these BVAS. It was used in Anambra State as well. It was used in Ekiti State. So that whole period would have given INEC the whole time frame since then till now was like 1 year, if not more, would have given INEC the opportunity to correct all the irregularities that were associated with the use of BVAS when it was initially introduced.
Are you saying by this that digital technologies did not help in any way to reduce or promote the credibility of elections in Nigeria like we expected? Because you talk about some of the issues has to do with tackling fraud, like you mentioned earlier, overvoting, underage voting, some of these challenges across the polling. Would you say that at this moment that the introduction of digital technology hasn't helped to reduce or help to promote the credibility of our election process?
Yes, to an extent, to the expectations of Nigerians based on how much INEC had shown us that they have prepared for the elections, how much that was budgeted for the elections, the assurance of the functionality of these technologies. Based on that expectations of Nigerians, I can tell you that they haven't gotten there. It's just in a scale of 1 to 10, probably 3. 3 or 4.
That's not fair. I mean, that's not fair, especially if you have on the electoral body. It's not fair. Let's look at it because you just scored INEC less than 30, or maybe I should say less than 40%. In its performance in this election. But you would agree with me. You also spoke about the fact that when technology is introduced, that it needs time, to be embraced. You also mentioned that the first time that the BVAS was being used was in November 2021,
September.
In September 2021 in Delta State, in Isoko, where that by-election was held. All right, we put all of these figures together and we look at the drive, especially with the passage of the Electoral Act in the law, which actually substantiates that early 2022, and the current delivery of the Independent National Electoral Commission, where abiding by digital methods of electronic methods is concerned. Do you think that we are being fair enough with the Independent National Electoral Commission, especially when you consider the time with which within which these programs were introduced or these technologies were introduced, and the Nigerian system, the Nigerian electorate, getting used to it and having a hit-free election by the reason of proper use of these technologies?
Okay, now I would explain it this way, because the INEC's activity is all encompassing. Like, if aside the technological aspect of it, we are talking about the preparedness, how prepared INEC was for this election. Well, now when you put yourself out, when you say I will do this and you're hell-bent on doing it, you should possibly make ways, make efforts to let it happen, especially when you know it is at the bane, at the heart of Nigerians' desires. This is the bane of our desires to have free, fair, and credible elections, transparent elections. INEC staff, most of them came late. There are some places that voting started by 6 p.m. There are some places that voting started by 8 p.m. in the night. And based on their guidelines and their rules, voting should start way earlier than that. There are some places that INEC materials did not even come at all. INEC officials did not come. Before they accredited anybody on the queue, it took a whole while before that happened. And regardless of the monies that were put in place for this election, that were used, the experts involved in it and all, I mean, it should 2 years, or okay, let's say a little above 1 year is enough time to actually look into all the irregularities that the beavers presented before this election.
I would not like to cut you short, but we have more interesting subjects to discuss in this conversation, but we need to take a breather now.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, viewers, let's take this breather. When we return, the conversation will continue with Tobe Madu right here in the studios. I'll be right back in a minute. Welcome back if you're just joining us. This is The Ultimate Choice, reaching you live from our live television in Abuja. And of course, we are looking at the just concluded February 2023 presidential elections and the performance of the electoral materials, especially the electronic materials of that election, and the digitization drive of Nigeria and the Independent National Electoral Commission to ensure that Nigeria is brought into the book of those who perform elections electronically. And it's been a wonderful conversation. I've had Tochukwu Madu, who is a legal practitioner in the studios, helping us to answer some questions in this regard. All right, Tochukwu, we were talking about interesting parts, just before we went on that break. You said that INEC, there is more demand or could have done better than it did in this with the results that we had with these elections. I'd like to get, what you think were actually the major limitations to the digitization process that we had. We've mentioned what it helps to correct, but can we look at the challenges? What did they encounter across the different polling units, across the different wards that you can reckon with?
Well, I think the issue has to do with, INEC explained why there was a glitch. They said they had a network glitch, and in a situation like this, where a network glitch is expected, right? But then it was left for the INEC to work tirelessly on every possible way to prevent that from happening. So the major issue that made the whole process look like a sham was the fact that the results were not electronically transmitted. And I mean, we can say that is a willful attempt of probably the ad hoc staff there.
I agree that you have right to this opinion. I'll also take us back a little. During the time that the National Assembly, was litigating over the passage of the Electoral Act, we saw many members, especially in the House of Representatives, taking a position against the use of electronic voting and electronic transmission of results.
Yeah.
And a lot of Nigerians raised eyebrows that these are the enemies of Nigeria that do not want the country, to develop and move on and all of that. But we have come so far and we have seen the results. One of the things that many of them, in conversations that we had, with them back then, was that Nigeria was not ripe enough. That when you talk about the penetration of telecommunication across the country, that it was still low. Some places, I remember a particular member of that committee talking about the fact that in some parts of this country, they were still running on 2G technology, some were on 3G. 4G was just for the highbrow areas of the country, and that if we are to have elections, that we would definitely have glitches like this. So can we say that the current situation has justified the positions of these members of the House of Representatives who kicked against this part of the Electoral Act back then?
Yeah, well, what we should understand is that the legislative arguments in political arguments and the bail arguments and that in the National Assembly is usually marked by a lot of interest, personal interest, and what have you. So most of those senators and House of Reps members that probably argued against the use of beavers, to some of us, we feel is as a result of their own personal interest. Now, the use of beavers would mean, the electronic transmission will mean that whatever results that is produced from the polling unit would be transmitted there and then to the saver, and Nigerians will have access to it. So some of these members arguing against it may be putting a front of it being as a result of the fact that we haven't advanced technologically to that extent to use it. But then the undertone of it may just be that, they want to still have it manually transmitted so that they can alter the results from the polling units, which is mostly the situation that we saw in the election. We saw the sheets, some of the polling units, some of the election sheets were altered, pyros, and it was just a joke. Some of the election sheets that we saw were just a joke as far as we're concerned. So we can't say that their concern was the functionality of the equipment, although largely when you're introducing new technologies like this, you must test them, you must test run them. So we won't say due to the fear that it wouldn't function, then we will not now try it, especially when, if it functions properly, it would give us good results. So all over the world, you try out new inventions and it may not work, and on the second trial or the third trial, you find a way to make it work better. So we expected that INEC, the way they were so confident about these new technologies in place, the way they talked about it, the way they went about the electoral amendment of the Electoral Act and all of that, we expected that the process would actually go without so much hinges. And moreover, the accreditation process that precedes the voting can be done offline. You don't need any 4G or 2G to do accreditation. But yes, we still witnessed accreditation issues.
Why? How do you mean we don't need 4G? When the cards would have to be inserted for the persons to confirm. Is that technology not... does it not need a network for that?
From my understanding, the network aspect of it comes in when you want to transmit it to the safer or to the INEC viewing portal. That is when the network aspect of it comes down. But accreditation can be done offline, from my understanding. And yet, even with the offline platform of the accreditation, it wasn't still working. So Largely, I can't tell for sure that the arguments then was for the interest of Nigerians or real concerns on how much it will function. If you want it to work, all hands will be put on deck. All hands will put on deck. Like an institution like INEC that has all the experts, all the technological experts and IT gurus working with them all over the world. I mean, with the funds that were released for the election and the technical know-how that almost all the electoral officials had, the training of the staff and all that, they should have been able, if they were really concerned about the functions, have been able to make everything work.
All right. We are here now, and just because of this process and the irregularities and the allegations, of irregularities that have trailed the 2023 presidential election, the governorship elections have been postponed, by an extra week. Do you think that this time is enough to actually correct some of the mistakes or the mishaps that came with the presidential election that happened, just a few weeks back?
I want to believe is enough. I'm not an IT expert, and if INEC in charge of the elections come out to say, oh, we need to move it for one more week, we want to trust them to believe that 1 week is enough to, sort out all the issues that relates to the beavers and the rest of them. Although the whole the postponement of the election came to us as Nigerians as a rude shock, because we're getting up to votes in the governorship elections with the same tempo and the same vibe that everyone has. But then moving it for 1 more week, if it's for the interest of the nation, if it's for the interest of if it's for national interest and for them to be able to make it work better, then we should just, we can give them the benefit of doubt.
Okay.
That they are going to live up to the expectations this time around. Nigerians most Nigerians have lost trust, to be honest with you, with the entire process, because the emphasis laid on the beavers and the electronic transmission of those results, honestly, it was just it for Nigerians. It was the avenue where a whole lot of election irregularities would have been curbed. A lot of things between voting at the polling units and manually taking the result to the collation center, a lot of things happen. A lot of things happen within that that time frame. That transmitting it electronically would have curbed, would have stopped, would have just put an end to it. So that was just the bane for Nigerians. And we really hope that in the governorship election that have been postponed, we hope that INEC lives up to the expectations.
Well, like you said, we only hope, and we hope that March the 16th or the 15th?
18th.
18th,
yeah. Just 1 more week.
Is a reality, yes, for those who really are anxious to vote. But as we wrap up on this conversation, what do you think can be done to significantly improve the digitization process, of our elections in Nigeria? What can be done in terms of actions now? What can be done in terms of improvement on the existing technologies? Do we need more technology? Do we need some sort of collaboration between the Independent National Electoral Commission and other institutions of government to effectively deliver a digitized electoral process?
I think what we need more is sincerity and the will, right? Because no matter we can say we need to get more collaboration, do more collaboration, get more experts involved, probably whatever it is that funds can do to help out, get more funds to do that. But all of these would fall to nothing if there is no sincerity amongst the institution, being INEC. If they're not sincere, if they are not willing to actually sit up to their responsibilities and expectations, if they're not willing to do the right thing, no matter the suggestions made to improve the system, it would not happen.
All right. As we finally wrap up on the show, voting, governorship elections, is less than 2 weeks away. And a lot of Nigerians, feel disgruntled with the result or the outcome of the February 25th elections. Do you think this frustration, I mean, and this, despite all of this, we saw about 25 million persons participate, amongst the voting population in Nigeria. Now the election is going into individual states. Do you see more people coming out, or do you see the results, of the presidential election affecting people to withdraw, from participating within the state elections?
Yeah, on a personal note, I would come out and vote, but I also know that a lot of Nigerians are demoralized at the moment. What they experienced from their polling units and with the whole presidential election was nothing to write home about. Nigerians were really disappointed. We saw some people, although I can't encourage that and I won't support that, but we saw some people, destroy their PVCs, some people went on, they wasted their time coming out to vote and all, So, but then we have to also know and understand that the governance must get to the people, and the aspect of governance that directly deals with the people feels the impact more is at the local level. At the elections coming up now, by March 18th, which is the state governorship elections and the House of Assembly elections. So these are the positions that actually that directly their policies, their actions and inactions directly affects the people. And we can't all have we can't all be intentional about the presidential election and then
less
concern about the governorship and House of Assembly, because those are the people that we directly hold accountable, that we can say, so you did this, you did that, So I would encourage all Nigerians to actually come out and vote. Just come out and vote for, your candidates, protect your votes, and let's hope that this time around, all the technologies that would be put in place for the elections would actually function effectively. So personally, I would come out and vote, but I know that Nigerians are, largely demoralized by the outcome of the elections.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We hope that Nigerians do learn that change is continuous and it's a process.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. I've been having conversation with Tochukwu Madu, a legal practitioner, and we've been looking into the aftermath of the 2023 presidential elections and the role of digitization process of the Independent National Electoral Commission to ensure that the Nigerian electoral process becomes electronic and digitalized. But most importantly, as we wrap up on the show, let me leave you with this thought. A lot of time we desire change, and we have seen our desire for change in Nigeria drive us toward a particular direction. And in my own point of view, most times this direction have not always taken us forward the way we much expected. Therefore, my submission is that we must be patient enough whenever a process is introduced. We must know that there is a time between implementation and desired results. We must follow the process, patiently wait, and while waiting, participate, playing our roles every step of the way to ensure that we have a democracy that we can all be proud of. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of The Ultimate Choice. I'll come your way again next time. I am Olubinga George. Have a great evening.